Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira is a masterpiece not only of anime, but of the entire sci-fi genre. Along with Ghost in the Shell, Akira is responsible for introducing anime to the West, and the overwhelming popularity of the style that followed. Even now, over 30 years after its release in 1988, Akira is still one of the most beloved anime movies of all time. What most people don't realize is just how unusual and ambitious the movie's production was for anime at the time. Otomo's massive vision didn't end with the story itself. The Akira movie would push animation to unprecedented heights. But how was Otomo able to bring this massive vision to life? And why does Akira remain one of the highest quality uses of the medium? This is Making Film. This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/cinematyler. Akira was based on Otomo's best-selling manga of the same name. The popularity of the manga no doubt helped get the movie greenlit, but another, perhaps more important factor had to do with Japan's economy during the 1980s. Between 1986 and 1991, Japan was experiencing an economic bubble of greatly inflated real estate and stock market prices. It seemed like Japan's economy was going to overtake the Western world, and we can see this fear depicted in several Western-made movies during this time.
McFly! Fujitsu-san, konnichiwa!
However, the bubble burst in 1992, and Japan's economy stagnated. Luckily, Akira was made right in the middle of this boom, and another feature of the bubble was that companies were investing in anime, which allowed Otomo to secure a large budget to complete his vision. The movie's budget was 1.1 billion yen, which was equivalent to about $10 million. It was the most expensive anime ever produced at the time. The scale of the production required collaboration between several different media companies and animation studios, which were collectively called the Akira Committee. Otomo adapted his own manga with the help of Izo Hashimoto. Taking into account differences in the mediums of manga and film, he made significant changes, including a new ending.
1巻から2巻ぐらいまでは非常に細かく書いてあるんですけど、最後の方はだいたいイメージだけ書いてあるんですけど、だいたいでもこれに沿ってやっていきましたね。で今全部で何ページになったかちょっと分かりませんけども、2000近いんじゃないですかね。
Otomo had a bit of experience as a director already. He had directed the construction cancellation order segment of the three-part anime movie Neo Tokyo, which was released in 1987. Otomo had also been a cinephile from a young age, and would travel 3 hours by train to see the latest movies when he was in high school. This was in the early 70s during the American New Hollywood movement, and Otomo's love of movies was formed by classics like Easy Rider, Midnight Cowboy, and Bonnie and Clyde. In an interview, Otomo said, "New cinema films were full of weird people as opposed to heroes. This had an extraordinary impact on me. New Hollywood movies drew Otomo to outsiders, and he suggested in the same interview that they may have even influenced his sense of himself as a contrarian, saying, 'It must have been about this time that my contrarian character came to the fore. New cinema films were stories in which basically the main characters are wanderers. Maybe I was attracted to that lifestyle. In any case, I wanted access to my beloved films whenever I felt like it. I wanted to get to know the crew that were drawing for COM, and I wanted to see the world. So on graduating, I moved straight to Tokyo.' Otomo's vision for Akira was significantly more ambitious and cinematic than was usual for anime at the time, and he drew a lot of inspiration from his love of movies. More importantly, he refused to cut corners to save time and money like other animes normally did. Otomo was very hands-on throughout the whole process, and he personally storyboarded the entire movie before shooting began. He did this for all 783 scenes, which ultimately became 2,122 shots. In a way, it was also during this process that Otomo edited the movie.
I draw a tremendous number of boards. I actually draw every possible scene that could appear in the movie. Then I begin to cut out the ones that aren't absolutely necessary. You really have to finish your film on storyboard first. You can't edit after you've shot a lot of extra film, like in live action. I really put most of my energy into this phase because I knew it would help every other part of the production.
Otomo chose to use high-quality techniques and materials to rival any Hollywood movie. Akira was filmed on 70mm, almost 3.5 times larger than the standard 35mm film stock. Otomo's approach stood in contrast to most animation, which has a long history of cutting corners for the sake of cost and time. Hanna-Barbera, the studio behind many classic cartoons like Tom and Jerry and the Flintstones, famously would repeat backgrounds and animate only a character's head rather than the whole body. And new technology has typically meant new ways to cut corners. Disney began using a process of Xeroxing pencil sketches onto animation cells for 101 Dalmatians, bypassing the hand inking process entirely. This is why the movie has such a unique look compared to other Disney animated movies. The technology arguably saved Disney's animation studio from collapse. Of course, Otomo would use traditional cell animation, where each frame is hand-drawn onto a cellulose acetate sheet and then photographed. But a major difference in how Akira was animated versus other animes, particularly TV animes, was that Akira was filmed at a full 24 frames per second. TV animes often will be filmed at much lower frame rates to save costs, as low as 12 or sometimes even 8 frames per second. Because of this, the movement in Akira is much more realistic looking by comparison. Some scenes were even shot in true slow motion, meaning that they used an even higher frame rate to capture as much motion as possible so it will be clear and detailed when slowed down, the same way that live-action slow motion is shot. Altogether, there were more than 160,000 individual frames used in the movie. That's over double the number used for most Hollywood animated movies. Otomo also refused to cheat any movement like many animes at the time did, like panning over still images, or only animating the main characters while the background is motionless. The movie even uses a little bit of CGI, which was still a new technology at the time. It was used mainly for artistic purposes, which you can most clearly see in the psychic wave patterns the scientist uses to study Tetsuo and Akira. Akira was the first Japanese production to use pre-scoring, a technique where the actors record their lines before the animation process begins so that animators can base their work on the actors' performances. Pre-scoring had been around since the 1930s, but it was a highly unusual practice for anime because it is more time-consuming and expensive than having the actors try to match the animation. Otomo was adamant that the lip-sync needed to be perfect, especially in the close-ups, and he succeeded. All scenes in the movie have accurate lip-syncing. A key advantage to pre-scoring was the freedom it allowed the actors. Experienced voice actors would be in the habit of adjusting themselves to match the picture, so Otomo purposefully cast relatively unknown actors because he wanted unrestrained, dynamic performances.
Eventually, I ended up using a lot of new and unknown voice talents. In this film, as you know, we used the pre-recording system. I did this because I expected the voice actors to create their own character personalities. I thought this approach would be better than me telling each actor exactly how I wanted them to speak.
This method of animation also allowed the animators to accurately recreate the mouth shapes of the 5 main Japanese vowel sounds, which can have either a normal or extended length. Another way of ensuring perfect lip sync was with the use of a device called a quick action recorder. The recorder would use a video camera to quickly digitize frames and play them back at 24 frames per second so that motion could be assessed and adjusted before the cells were colored. Normally, the animator would have to check the accuracy of the lip sync themselves, and it still wouldn't always come out right. The recorder allowed them to make sure everything looked right before going to the expense of developing the film.
We also were able to mimic the actors' movements as they spoke, making the animation quite realistic. It's been a long time since we've been able to achieve this kind of accuracy in recording and sync.
Next, we'll take a look at the cinematography of Akira and the unique way its scenes are lit. The scale of Akira presented new challenges for the animation process. To make it more manageable, the movie was broken down into 4 main sequences. The movie uses a lot of live-action techniques, including slow motion, point-of-view shots, backlighting, lens flares, and shaky motion that mimics handheld camera work. This gives it a very cinematic look that is still distinctly anime. A particularly noticeable one of these techniques that helps give Akira such a unique look is the use of light trails on the motorcycles, which in a live-action movie would be made using a long exposure. Another challenge for animators was that there are a lot of night scenes, and Otomo specifically wanted a dark, grimy look for the movie. In order to get this look, they had to layer many cells on top of each other to reduce the light levels. Some sequences used up to 9 layers. Director of photography Katsuji Misawa said that most of the action taking place at night, quote, created several interesting problems, and they had to use extreme care and the right photographic equipment to get the desired effects. He went on to say that the dim look Otomo wanted was very difficult to achieve with a camera, and they had to overlap drawings over each other as well as over the background. Even better, while most animated night scenes would be fairly monotone, Kimi Yamana, the color coordinator, used a total of 327 different colors. Art director Toshihiro Mizutani noted that night scenes are usually drawn with blue tones to create a darker look, but he had always wanted to try an unorthodox color scheme. Otomo approved, so he instead stressed reds and greens. Mizutani said that being allowed to experiment was one of the reasons he was, quote, so very happy to be involved in such a progressive project with an innovative artist like Otomo at the helm. The city of Neo-Tokyo is incredibly complex. It took Otomo several issues of the comics to fully flesh it out, so adapting it on screen was a challenge of its own, along with achieving the specific, gritty style Otomo wanted.
As I originally developed the comic, I used each issue to build more depth and size to this mammoth city. I kept trying to achieve this by creating a variety of situations to stage the graphic storytelling. But with film, you get to combine all this into one, and I think it is much more convincing on film than in a serialized comic strip.
When Mizutani asked Otomo for an example of the movie's worldview, Otomo drew him a detailed, grungy city street. Mizutani looked at it and declared that level of detail was impossible. Luckily, it turned out not to be impossible, and the level of detail in the movie is insane. For the thousands of high-rise buildings in the night scenes, they had to precisely measure each hand-painted dot of light representing the windows in order to get the perspective perfect.
We begin with 3mm windows. The one behind would have windows only a 0.5 millimeter, and the one behind that could be represented only by a dot, perhaps a line. It requires very precise drawing.
Otomo drew on live-action cinematic styles in all areas of the movie, including the editing. Perhaps because of his background as a manga artist, Otomo did use some unique angles, occasionally breaking the 180-degree rule, and used a pretty fast-paced editing style, which you can see in the scenes where Tetsuo hallucinates after escaping the hospital. When Otomo first saw the rushes of the movie, he was disappointed, especially in the second half. In an interview, he said, I left the theater very quickly and came back home to tell my wife that the movie was a failure. This was because I thought the first half was good, but because the time and budget was limited, with so many cuts, the quality dropped as the story developed. In general, I thought the picture quality and cut quality went down when the movie went into the latter half. It seems that editing was a particular concern for Otomo, because he continued saying, to give some examples of what I mean, there were just too many cuts. I think there were more than 2,000 cuts in the end. That meant we didn't have enough animators to do all the work. So each animator had way more work than they could do. So that meant they did a lot of overtime and had to make compromises in terms of animation quality. Luckily though, when Akira was remade with 5-channel audio, Otomo saw the movie again and liked it better. The character design in Akira is distinctive. Otomo once stated that he was influenced by American comics while writing the manga, saying that he wanted to create an American comic-style world. And it's true that Akira looks different from most anime, but that isn't to say that it looks American either. It's a style unique to itself. Most anime and manga conform to a style popularized by renowned manga artist Osamu Tezuka in the 1950s and 60s. Tezuka's style was itself influenced by Disney cartoons, and like most anime to follow, features very wide-eyed and exaggerated figures. Another typical feature of this anime and manga style is that the main characters will usually have different hairstyles or colors to help the audience distinguish them. However, most of these conventions are not found in Akira. Overall, the characters in Akira are correctly proportioned, realistic, and have a distinctly Japanese appearance. That said, Otomo will break away from realism when it serves a purpose. An obvious example is Tetsuo's mutation, but more subtle examples are how the character's expressions will sometimes become more cartoonish for effect. Sometimes cartoonish movement is used to add comic relief, like how Kaneda's movement becomes exaggerated when he dodges falling rubble, injecting humor into a horrific scene. Another notable difference from most anime is that Akira's female characters are drawn in the same style as the male characters. While anime in general is somewhat notorious for its extremely cute female characters, the female characters in Akira are realistically drawn and more practically dressed.
I'm often asked why I always draw such strange-looking girls. Well, it's hard to say, because there is no real reason. It's just that most comics emphasize super cute girls. Actually, it's easy to draw good-looking girls. Anyone can do that.
The incredible level of detail and commitment to an artistic vision in Akira truly sets it apart. Otomo, as both a manga artist and a longtime cinephile, saw the possibility in adapting Akira to attempt what had never been done before and create something truly unique. Check out this episode's bonus video on the incredible music of Akira. It's available right now on Patreon for $1, and it will go into the $5 archive when my next video goes up. I want to take a moment to thank this episode's sponsor, Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service tailor-made for cinephiles like you. Mubi features a lineup of great films, handpicked by experts, non-algorithm, that take you on a guided journey through the best that cinema has to offer, with a new film added every single day. What's really cool is how Mubi curates the releases into retrospectives, specials, and specific subgenres. It's like having your own personal film festival that you can stream anytime, anywhere. Right now, you can see Buster Keaton's must-see classic comedy, The General, about a Civil War railroad engineer whose train and fiancé gets stolen. Or check out The Visitor, with character actor Richard Jenkins in a starring role, about a professor who reluctantly allows two undocumented immigrants to stay with him. All of this and much, much more are available right now on Mubi. Try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/cinematyler. That's mubi.com/cinematyler for a whole month of great cinema for free. Or join Cinema Tyler on Patreon at the $5 level and get extended access to Mubi as a perk. If you like this one, you'll be happy to know that my next video is also on Akira. You can find it right here when it's ready. Thanks for watching.